July
I think
15th.
we're on now.
July 15th.
Four.
There's a discussion about an additional date.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. Yes, thank you. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Tuesday, January 24th agenda session. I will take a motion on our minutes. Minutes have been motioned. You have a second to that motion. The minutes will stand without objection. If you will take a look at the agenda for this evening, we have ordinances on a final read. Madam Councilwoman Knoll, will you hit your mic for me and give me a little bit of an update, please, ma'am, on the two ordinances on final reading in District 8?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I am going to ask that I do a 2-week defer on this because I have yet to speak with the developers in detail, and my constituents have some concerns. And so until I can have that conversation with them, it is my intention to defer for 2 weeks. And if they have not contacted me by then it was definitely my intention to deny.
Okay, so that we will look for that motion this evening. Would that be February 7th? Just to
February
confirm?
7th, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
That's okay. I'm
Yes.
just looking at our calendar so that we have dates ahead of time when we get ready for that at 6 o'clock. Thank you, ma'am. Ordinances on first reading tonight. We do have a planning item in District 7. And under resolutions, council office, we have a resolution with a little bit of sponsorship, I see. Any questions? I'll check the board. Thank you. Economic development, we have 3 items in District 7. And we do have an item for the Family Justice Center. Council or Dr. Burrs, any questions or comments on that one? If you hit your light for me, please. Thank you.
Actually, no, the executive director of the Family Justice Center is here if anyone has any questions. It's pretty straightforward. They're asking for a grant from the county, and in order to do that, they need our approval to do that. I mean, that's it.
That's it.
I mean, it's like
Pretty
any
cut and
other
dry.
grant. Yeah.
Council, do you have any questions on this item? Councilwoman Hill, you have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I noticed on our 2-week agenda, a resolution for the Family Justice Center that looks to be the same resolution. Is that a duplicate?
It is, and I'll address that. We'll address that when we move to proposed agenda and ask for that to be removed by the
Got it.
city attorney. Thank you
Okay,
for
thank
pointing that out. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. You're paying attention. I like that. That's great. All right.
Always.
Thank you.
No other questions, sir?
Okay, I'm seeing no other lights, Dr. Burrs, for item E. So
Okay, so they can go.
I guess you drove all the way down. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
But, yeah. We do appreciate it and the work you do down at the Family Justice Center, I promise. Thank you very much. Council, if you take a look at our purchases, we have 3 this evening. Joda is here to answer any questions about that. If he's able to, are you able to get up there, Joda? Oh, he can, wow. Oh, you know, and that's in that bad. Happy birthday.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I can't think of a better way to spend entering my 30s than in this council chamber. It's very, very happy for that.
I worry about you. I worry about you. Yes, sir. Dr. Burrs, you have the floor, ma'am.
So first of all, I promised him we wouldn't embarrass him by singing happy birthday. Therefore, let's all sing happy
Oh, my
birthday, if that's okay. Ready? And happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday,
This is bad.
Joda. Happy birthday to you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I want to note for the record of the press here that this council can carry a tune, so I appreciate that.
Joda,
Harmonies were
Don't put our day
fantastic.
job, right?
yeah, don't put us. Yeah, I did tell him we wouldn't embarrass him, so therefore we absolutely have to. So, do not, I lie. Don't put that in the press. Or wherever, or I guess you can. So a couple of things on the RFP. I've already spoken with Joda about. And they have to do with the concept of clawback. They have to do with the concept of oversight committee. And what was the other one? What was the other?
Around,
Bifurcation.
Bifurcation. All right.
That's what I have in my notes from last week's
Yeah,
conversation at council.
yeah. And we talked about it this week. And so do you want to address those? Let me see if I've got this right. We're going to put in the RFP at the beginning, something about bifurcation. Is that correct?
yes, ma'am.
All right. And the second one is the oversight committee. It's suggested the oversight committee be comprised of one representative from every district, since the concept, and it's a good one, is if we do these sorts of things all over the city, this is going to be the one that becomes a model. That's why we're spending so much time on it. And my colleagues have done a great job of asking good questions and all. I mean, it's great. So once we get this the way we want it, and there's an oversight committee comprised of us, if the next one is in Rakita's district, then we'll be all there to work with her as we work in this district, et cetera. The requirements for membership, we're going to work on, because it's not necessary right now. It's necessary that it be there, that it be commented on in the RFP, but we've got a little bit of time to decide what the requirements for membership are. And what was the other one? Bifurcation,
I just have the note.
clawback.
Yeah.
Clawback. The clawback is if you have, the city will be paying for the services rendered. There's two pieces to this. There's the physical facility and there's the services rendered. So let's start with the services rendered. The city will be paying for the services rendered, and if they're not appropriate, then that will be taken care of by, they don't get paid. They didn't deliver the deliverables. As far as the building itself is concerned, I wasn't sure whether you said a reversionary clause or a right of reverter, and they're two different things. So what's in there?
So the city will likely I'll tell you that when we go to contract negotiations and we award to a developer, whether it be a long-term ground lease or a property transfer, we will be fighting really hard for a reversionary clause in the contract. I can't imagine there's a situation where there won't be a reversionary clause if certain conditions are not met. For example, the use of the property has got to be what we have all intended for this to be used as, is for supportive housing. This property cannot become a nuisance to the neighborhood. And then the city will retain reversionary rights if that covenant is broken over some period of time.
Okay, I was afraid you said right of reverter, which means then we're depending on maybe some administration further down not to exercise the right. And so I wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
I think that covers the concerns you guys had. If there's something else, I apologize. I didn't get to it.
Dr. Burns, I do
Okay.
have one more light. Madam Vice Chair? You have the floor, ma'am.
Yes, I think Councilwoman Burrs and Joe, I think y'all covered the majority of the items, especially with the oversight committee. I am in agreement with one representative from each council district since it is a model. So just wanted to make sure that that is, that wouldn't be added in here. That would be a separate resolution or ordinance.
Well, I think the intent here was that you can always say there'll be at contract time, there will be an oversight, but I think we're saying, unless we have a guarantee that that's in there or will be in there on the record, then we're hesitant to sign off.
Right,
on the
absolutely.
RFP.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure it's
and
in
it's
here.
fine. I mean, we've already had that discussion.
Okay.
It's just, I'm putting it on record.
Okay, and I wanted to also confirm, as far as the evaluation committee, what was the reason why city council couldn't participate?
Yeah, so I think there were challenges, and I'll also defer to the city attorney, but given that this body by city code is actually the body that would hear a protest if there was some issue with the bid, it creates a lot of issues if you are also the one making the decision. You'd be hearing a decision about a decision that you'd make. I will defer to Phil on that.
And that's the conflict concern. You need to be careful about being in two different positions on two different sides of the same issue.
Okay.
So in this case, the recommendation, if you're going to hear the appeals from that body on there, you need to be separate.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And my last thing was regarding the, within this, we had a commitment to the community outline. At the end of it, it mentioned the entities or individuals that will be, I guess, included within that. I noticed that specifically was Silverdale Baptist Church and Silverdale Baptist Academy. There are other churches and other organizations and entities that can be involved. So even if you change it to religious institutions or whatever you want to say, but I don't think within that commitment, there needs to be a specific group of people or a specific institution listed in that. So I wanted to bring that back up. I think I mentioned it before, just making sure that it's an inclusive document and not targeted. One group has a targeted focus of control within the situation.
Absolutely. We feel like that this is important that we work with organizations of all types, including the faith community, but also neighborhood organizations. I think that's why, at the direction of this council, we went back to roundtable discussions, and so we're happy to make that adjustment.
Okay, thanks, Joda.
Seeing no other lights, I have a process question. So we have an RFP before us this evening, and we have 3 identified items of concern, maybe 4 with this last item. How do we make those changes, and can we make those amendments to the document before 6 p.m.?
Yes. So I think the main one that I would that is not in the document, well, it is further down, but we can add language to the top saying that the contract between the service provider and the developer could be separate. That's already stated in the document, but we're happy to clarify it at the top. But the rest of those items have been articulated in the document as they are now. And I think with the exception of that one change to the contract of the community, just to broaden it out a little bit, I don't think there are going to need to be a dramatic number of changes. And we can either make the changes in between here and the 6 o'clock meeting. You're not voting on the RFP itself, just our ability to issue it. And the administration is agreeing that we're happy to make those changes. So either way, we're happy to move forward, but I'll do my very best to make sure we get those 2 adjustments made. So that way you can have them before in your 6 o'clock packet before you vote on the purchases.
Okay. That would be very important, I think, to address the concerns that we've heard here today. So, okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments on the RFP on tonight? Dr. Burrs?
If they're unable to get everything in by 6 o'clock tonight as we want it, then we can just put on the record that we're doing this, approving this based on the assurance that da-da-da-da-da will be in there. You can do that too.
That is an option.
All right. Thank
Okay. Council, any other questions on purchases or our RFP this evening? We have no emergency purchases and no sole source to report this evening. If you would, take a look at future considerations and hit your light. If you have any questions on future considerations. Councilwoman Hill, you have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do not have a question about future considerations as much as a comment. Looking over the resolutions related to the CARTA board, I am thrilled with these folks that are being lifted up to join the board. Name after name, energetic, future thinkers. I just feel like these new members of this CARTA board are going to bring a whole new conversation to bear. And I just wanted to say how proud I am to see these names.
Thank you, Councilwoman. We're looking forward to getting you, this will be heard on the 14th, the agenda on the 14th, and we're looking forward to getting you bios and resumes for all of these individuals. But suffice it to say, as you review those names, we have some heavy hitters on this board. Everybody from people with deep roots in the community to former leadership at Volkswagen America and to the leadership at EPB. And I think that demonstrates that Mayor Kelly is very serious about really bringing some new life into our public transportation authority and making sure that it is a organization that can adapt to the changes that we need to see in order to achieve our workforce development goals, to achieve our mobility goals and service our community that really needs public transportation, but then also expand access to folks who otherwise may make the choice to use public transit if it works effectively. So we're very grateful that this incredible group of folks have agreed to serve on the board, and we look forward to having them here on the 14th, as well as providing you a lot of information. And so there will be more to come on that.
Well, and to shine a light beyond, we have some remarkable business leaders within this cohort, but also just some very intentionally thoughtful community leaders who have been talking about multimodal transport and working in that space and working with our Spanish-speaking community, representatives from District 3, from all over. It's just a great group. It's going to change things, I think.
We agree. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions or comments on future considerations? I did have a conversation with Chief Hyman about item 1. It was actually very fascinating to understand the difference between a quint, pump, and ladder. And well, it was for me. And I would actually ask perhaps a possibility, Councilman Henderson, sometime in public safety to get a rundown of some of the equipment and what it's used for and how it's changed over time. It was actually a really fascinating conversation. And I think it would be very, very helpful for council as it comes in the future when they ask for more equipment updates that we fully understand it. But if you would consider it, sir, I'd love to see it personally. I think you're hitting on the cylinder. So thank you very much. Any other questions or comments for future considerations? Seeing none. Oh, I do see your light now, Councilman.
Thank you, sir. Before we go on to departmental report, I'm trying to work through some logistic problems with our proclamation for this afternoon. I would like to request that this be placed on the January 31st agenda.
The Firefighter Cancer Awareness Month, sir.
Yes, sir.
Council, any issues with placing that on the January 31st?
That would be next week's agenda.
I have no problem with that, sir.
Okay, if we could get an updated agenda.
And I see council has no objection.
We
Okay,
can get an updated agenda reflecting that.
okay,
Thank you, sir.
we good?
Yeah.
Mr. Attorney and Madam Clerk, thank you very much. Make note of that this evening. Thank you, Councilman. We do have a human resources, talk about fascinating, EIG update that I think,
Yeah. This isn't gonna be like singing happy birthday or anything else. This will not be anyway the
all
same.
I'm gonna say is I hope it's not your birthday today.
Yeah, no, and I turned 30 about 20 years ago, so. We get our slides up, please. Thank you, awesome. So we are here to do good afternoon, council. We are here to do another egg update. I think the last one we did was in May, and I'll give you a little history. But before we do that, I want to introduce my new deputy, Mr. Daniel Harrigan. He is our new deputy for Human Resources, and we actually worked together out west, and he came out here to check out Chattanooga and help us get this Human Resources Department where we need it to be. So very excited to have him. He was instrumental in doing these slides today, so I want to give him full credit for everything that he did, and just have the opportunity to meet him. So if you don't have any immediate questions, I'll go ahead and start with the presentation. Are we good with that? Does everybody, and I want to make sure everybody got the slides, the red lines, we're good?
Yes, thank you for
Okay,
sending
okay.
that, Daniel.
Perfect. Okay, so before I jump into those, I will say that just as a reminder, because last time I was up here was in May, that we did form an AIG committee to make any of these changes. And that AIG committee consists of unions, management, mayor, staff, legal, and non-represented employees, and of course HR. So all of those together, we meet monthly and we talk about any proposed changes. They take them back to their representatives, and then they come back with any issues that they have with any changes that we have forthcoming before we actually put those before you. So just to give you that background and history. Okay. So the first change that we have, and I'm just going to go through these. If you want me to speed through them or you want me to slow down, please let me know. We are updating the introduction to remove procedures because it is a policy guide. And we'd like to see be more policy driven versus having procedures as they change on a regular basis. And we want to make sure that we don't have to keep coming before you to update those. The second one is really important because we have departments within the city that have their own accreditation. They also have grant requirements, and they have to have specific policies driven to that accreditation / grant requirements. And so that's like police with their CLIA accreditation, fire. We have APWA with Public Works, and we also have now the FJC that just had a grant review, and they have to have specifics. So that introduction of that new paragraph is to make sure that we are being clear that there are policies that exist and those may supersede the AIG policies, and that those do exist here. Any questions on any of that?
I'm seeing none, Mandy.
Okay. The next change is about changing job description to job classification. So that is what we call them here. So this is just a clarification of language. We have generic job postings, and then departments can have specific job descriptions. So a good example of this, Daniel had listed here, was like an admin support assistant. So you could have one in Public Works that does one variety of tasks and someone in another department that does another. And so this is just a clarification that they are classifications. That was what we call them, and they're not job descriptions. The next one is for request for a job evaluation. So again, this is a clarification. When we look at a reclass, when someone believes that their job is not what it once was, we are looking to see if 51% or more of the duties are higher level responsibilities. So if you get one or two tasks assigned to you, that does not change your job classification. But if 51% of your job changes, we should be evaluating that job to see if it needs to be changed, upgraded, downgraded, etc. And so that is the reason for this change. We also added in a classification committee. So that classification committee looks over whatever classification Human Resources has recommended, and they validate that. If they agree, they don't agree with what we do, and any type of classification reviews are now going through the mayor's office for approval as well. The next change is when we look at the classification plan, we're looking at the fact that we don't want people to be reviewing them every single month. Like I put it in and you said no, so next month. So we're saying that every 6 months you can submit. That's pretty industry standard as far as a job classification is considered. And so every 6 months, if you had something that you thought had changed, you're substantially changed, you could submit for it to be reviewed by the committee. And just so we're aware, the committee meets quarterly to look at all these job classifications. So we're not doing them on an ad hoc basis. The next is overtime pay. So this references an FLSA pay manual that was an old document that has not been maintained. So we're just taking this out because we don't use this anymore. The next one is kind of big. It's fill-in pay. So we've had a lot of issues since I've been here in the short time I've been here with discrepancies when it comes to fill-in pay versus for non-exempt versus exempt. And so fill-in pay, we're clarifying that is for hourly employees, it's 6%. And the difference is on exempt employees, it'll say 6% or step 1 of the range, whichever one is larger. So we wanted to clarify those. So we changed the names. So for non-exempt, it's fill-in pay, it's 6%. And again, we're saying substantially all the duties. So it's not because you took on one duty, it's substantially all the duties in order to be able to get that upgrade. We're now calling temporary assignment work out of classification for exempt employees to clarify that so we don't have those issues. You'll see up in this highlighted department heads, managers, supervisors are not eligible for additional compensation when performing tasks of subordinates in their department. That, for whatever reason, we couldn't get that out of the red line. That is current language. So I don't want you to think there's a change there. There's no change. Also, fire and police are separate and called out separately in this section in particular. So this does not apply to fire and police. I want to be sure to call that out in case anyone here, because we got some pushback during the AG about this. But it also clarifies that the mayor's office, when someone is working in a work out of class situation, you want to see a vacancy or a special assignment. And we had not been seeing that in the past. So we're clarifying that it has to be for one of those two reasons that we'd be paying somebody additional money. If it is for a special assignment, it has to be approved by the mayor's office. So it can't just be approved by the department. As you can see, these are you're seeing additional controls being put in place, and that's the reason for that. So the next one, when we talk about a reclassification, the current AG language did not allow for a demotion process. So if someone removed more than 50% of their job duties, or the job changed because we got a computer system that did what they used to do, there wasn't any way in the AG to actually look at that for a demotion. It said their pay has to stay the same, even if their job has completely changed. So we are adding in the language that the demotion process will follow, which is called out. Any questions on any of this? Am I going too fast? Or I know this is really exciting information. Okay.
I'm seeing no lights, Mandy.
Okay. All right. So the next one is the employee pay. So this is just an edit to match the recent change to existing city practice that we no longer have the weekly payroll.
Mandy, I do have one light.
Oh, go ahead.
Madam
Oh,
Vice Chair, you have the floor.
And that was my question. Are there any employees still on a weekly schedule?
There's no one, to my knowledge, there's no one still on weekly payroll. We stopped all of that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next change is just when I started here at the Human Resources, we had one employee relations coordinator. So that person handled all engagement, and they also handled all discipline, which we have 2,600 employees. That is not realistic. So we restructured the entire department. Now all HRBPs handle all of those tasks. So they have been designated out. They don't just do recruiting. They also do investigations. They do discipline. They do everything. And so we spread the wealth, which it's still a lot, but it is much better than having one person doing the stopgap for all that. So we removed we're removing any reference to employee relations coordinator within the EIG. All right, so the next change is, and this is something that's happening, you can see nationwide, where companies are taking the word when we have temporary, we do not call them employees. And the reason being because then they think that they are city employees. So they're referred to as temporary workers. We just recently got the RFP for 22nd Century. We're using them to do our contingent workforce. And so we are changing the term to temporary worker instead of temporary employee. Any questions? Sorry. I don't want to just keep rolling, but. And the next change, so we've all of these changes generally because we've had some sort of issue and needed clarification within the AG in order to change it. So one of the things in the AG under reinstatement says they're provided with the same fringe benefits, and the fringe benefits do not include PTO accruals. So if you leave the city and you come back, PTO accruals are consistent accruals over time, and that's called out in the PTO table, but it's not called out in this paragraph that you would restart with your PTO accruals. So we added in this language to say, with the exception of PTO accruals, if you are reinstated. And the probationary period. So we're clarifying, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Councilman Hester, you have the floor, sir.
I do. There's been a lot of concerns about the lateral movement. And does the date of hire changes with the lateral movement?
The date of hire, date of service with the
Date of
city would
service.
not change.
Right. Does
No,
not
if you
change.
laterally moved, like if you were in Public Works and you went to community development, your date of hire would remain the same.
Okay, I guess for the record. And also you mentioned you had a committee and you broke down the various groups that are part of, how many folk are on that committee?
Oh, gosh, it changes. I want to say,
12.
yeah, we've gone up and down. People have jumped on and off of the committee. So I'd say anywhere from 10 to 20 we've seen at any given time, depending on who shows up.
10 to 20, and then does it lean heavily toward administration or union or some of the general labor, you know?
So I mean, like I said, it varies on who shows up, but it's pretty even across the board. Like we've got, like I said, we have represented employees. We have, who we hear the most from is fire and SEIU. They're the ones that have the most response to any changes that we're making. So we have a Google Doc. And so everybody, I mean, we meet in person and they can have questions answered in person, but there's also a Google Doc. So they follow up with any questions that they have or make commentary on the Google Doc that they want us to follow up with that. And we don't move forward until those items have been resolved or discussed. So did I answer that?
You
I can
did.
get you the
Thank you.
specific
Thank
numbers
you.
after that.
Okay.
After this, if that
Thanks.
on there.
Good, Councilman?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you.
We good? Okay. Okay, so back to probationary period. So one of the things that, we have some practices in here that are no longer followed and haven't been followed for years. So that's where you see with the red line at the end of the probationary period, supervisor shall indicate the following. We haven't done that in years. So we're taking it out. Also clarifying that the probationary period is the final step in the hiring process. And that's just saying that that's your opportunity to show us what you have after the interview process. And now we go into outside employment. So we're talking about the fact that, and I'm sorry about the red line, that the updated is not right because we had to take a snapshot of this to put this the way we did for you, but it's the form must be updated annually if somebody has outside employment. Outside employment is very common here at the city. We're actually integrating it into new hire orientation because we have so many people that come here that already have a second job. And so we want to make sure that we get those forms right out of the door to make sure they understand what the expectations are and that we don't have any crossover. And then we removed a sentence that I think is duplicative of the sentence above, which says activities and conduct away from the job must not compete with, conflict, or compromise the city's interests. All right, on to nepotism. So again, this is a clarification. Would serve in a supervisory position. We added in or in the supervisory line because obviously so I had a child and Daniel was in between us. He's probably still not going to discipline that person. So for ethical purposes, we added that in. And it also includes a temporary, seasonal, and intern. And we just really, again, it's a duplicative in statement underneath.
Maybe I do have a
Yep.
question. Madam Chair, you have the floor.
Okay.
Yes.
In regards to the nepotism, is this currently happening and how often and how is it being addressed currently?
I'm sorry, I could not hear you. I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry. How's this being addressed currently? Is this currently happening and how often?
If it's currently happening and we have a situation it's basically, I can't change where somebody works currently today. I mean, we're advising that people shouldn't do it going forward. But currently we do have a lot of relations here that people work together, and we have in the nepotism policy, it says you're not supposed to be supervising that person, but the supervisory line is new. So we would just have to leave people until through attrition, they left, and then we would go forward with that because I can't move people who are functioning at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
You good, Madam Vice Chair?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so the next change is we added 3 holidays to the non-sworn PTO. And so this is what we've been doing in practice. It's just we didn't have it actually in the egg. And so we're updating the egg to reflect those additional days for sworn personnel that they were not reflected in the egg before we added the holidays. And those 3 holidays are Veterans, Christmas Eve, and Juneteenth. Okay, and then the PTO payout, this is again just a clarification. It's matching existing city practice, just calling out the sworn is handled a little bit differently. And then we go on to leave donation. So this is just talking about that fire is allowed to donate additional leave outside of what the rest of the city is allowed to do. And then we changed the language. We got a lot of feedback on the fact that people would be out, they would go out on leave, they would have to wait until their leave was exhausted to do the leave donation process. And that is a process because it's not hour for hour. So it actually has to be configured. And so there would be a week or two where that person would go with a gap without having any pay. And so generally when someone's in a leave situation, it's a pretty emergent situation. And so we said, when they get to 80 hours, they can go ahead and apply for it. They can't use the leave donation until all their leave is exhausted, but they can go ahead and be approved for the process so we don't have that gap so that they don't go without pay. Any questions on that?
I'm seeing none.
Okay. This is riveting, I can tell. Okay, so again, this was another feedback from the committee, which was that if someone is in an emergent situation, so if they are hospitalized for something and they can't apply for PTO donations, their supervisor can initiate that process for them. And another piece of feedback we got was that siblings was not direct enough, and they wanted that spelled out as to what a sibling is. So we changed siblings to sister, brother, stepsister, and stepbrother. And there's the temporary worker again. Administratively, this was interesting when I came to the city because the egg had put administrative leave capped at 5 business days. And it is, I'll just be honest, virtually impossible to conduct an investigation for a disciplinary issue in 5 business days. Between the fact that we have to get all the information that we need, we're doing the investigation, some people are not available. Some of these investigations that we've done here recently have 30 people interviewed, and you just can't make that happen in 5 days. And so we increased that to 14, which is pretty much industry standard for administrative leave. You know, that's trying to keep it within and trying to keep audit happy that we're following what we're supposed to be doing. So that's the reason for that change. It's just, it's not realistic to get people in that amount of time frame. Any questions on that? We've been doing a lot of investigations. So if you have questions as to how long, I can certainly share that with you. Okay. As far as the pension plan, this was something that came up again with an issue that we had. The legal recommended to change the general pension plan to insert the words during a period of continuous employment, and then talking about what our practice is that we refund employee contributions if someone leaves prior to being vested. Another change to match the current ordinance, which this is another retirement change. So it's just basically changing the words to match exactly what the ordinance says currently. Any questions on any of that?
Board is clear.
Okay. Okay, now dress code. We updated dress code. Again, there's subjective words, which reflects in good taste. We're just basically saying that it's what's appropriate for the work that's performed. And then in here, we had some words like obscene, halter tops, which I couldn't identify what a halter top was. I should be able to, but I don't. We have people that wear t-shirts, and so we took that out, essentially just making it match current practice. And this is new. We just instituted our multi-factor authentication. So we will likely remove the reference to Duo in this just because we don't want to call it a specific name. We want to just have the practice in there. So I wanted to make that noted as we talk about this when we make the final change. But this is a new policy, which is really exciting because we can now qualify for cybersecurity insurance and things like that that we couldn't before. So a huge move for the city and really exciting.
I do have a question about Duo, and is that a long-term plan for Duo, or are we looking at, this might be a Tyson question. But
That's a Tyson question. I don't know the answer.
he
so
can,
I would have to
he
ask
can
him.
answer me offline. That's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you. There you are.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
We've hit the end. Any questions? And I guess, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Dr. Burrs, you have the floor, ma'am.
We hear a lot of stuff up here at the meetings. You're the expert in this area. Do you think you've addressed all the issues, or are there still that need more thinking?
I think we are trying to step by step change the culture. And I think you're going to hear more before you hear less, because when you go to a culture of accountability, and one of the things on the employee engagement feedback was we don't have faith that people, are being held accountable for the things that they're doing. So as you see us move through the transition of this change, you will probably hear more before you hear less, because people that are being held accountable are very unhappy about being held accountable. My goal, and I know Daniel's goal, is that we are consistent and fair, and that we're applying equitably across the board. And so that is our mission, to make sure that we're being consistent and fair in what we're doing, and we're helping coach and guide those managers. We just did the manager supervisor training. We're now rolling out the one-on-one coaching for managers. That's going to be mandatory, that they have to do with all their employees. And so I think all the things are in place. We just have to get through this part, and then by the time this time next year, we'll be in a totally different place.
May I have one more, sir?
Yes.
One of the things I noticed when council was, when people would appeal things to council, was if somebody is allegedly a bad actor, there was no record. Supervisors didn't, it was kind of a good old boy system. So do you feel like that's taken care of, so that people are held accountable properly? So that if somebody needs to leave the city, then there's a valid record that will meet legal muster about leaving the city.
Yeah, so I would say it's a work in progress. I mean, I'm not
Okay.
gonna lie to you and tell you that we've had the perfect, we've trained everyone. We did the manager supervisor training and said, this is how we do the process. This is what progressive discipline looks like. And HR is constantly preaching that. And we are having conversations with the HR VPs to counsel, like, this is what we think you should do. We're working in tandem with legal on all of the things that we're doing. So, and we also did a massive sweep to all the departments because a lot of the discipline was being kept individually in the departments. And so we
Right.
ended up with boxes of discipline that we needed to get together. The other upgrade that we're doing in human resources, we're electronifying all of our files. So we will be able to easily access to see, was there prior discipline as we go through these things and not digging through a file, trying to see what happened or contacting the manager. So will there be, is there a better process in place? Yes. Are we working on it? Yes. Is it perfect? No. So, we're constant, it's a constant battle to get people to document because they think a verbal conversation is all they need to do. And
So what you're saying, I hope I heard you say.
Yeah.
Is that no more desk files. Everything's in the open, everybody
Yes.
knows.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very
Yes.
much.
yes,
Thanks, Mandy, appreciate it.
yes.
Thank you, Dr. Burrs. Any other questions or comments?
I don't have.
Did you?
I could sing, but it would really offend all of you, so I'm not going to. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. You don't want to hear it, trust me.
It's open mic night.
No. Yeah, no. I get, well, can I make one? I just want to ask, is this how you all would like to, because we're playing around to figure out what you all would like to see. And I want to make sure that this is clear. So, because we're going to have more coming towards now that I've got Daniel on board and he's very active in this. So I want to make sure this is what you want to see. If there's something different, please let us know. We're happy to provide that for you.
Yeah, I was going to comment, Mandy, and I thank you, Daniel, for sending that this morning because I thought it was important to get a little bit of head start. This is, I think, exactly what we're hoping to see. We can process this and digest this a little bit easier than I think what we've dealt with in the past. So I'm seeing no other questions or comments for you. I'm keep waiting, but no one's coming. So I appreciate the presentation.
Thank you. We really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Okay. Council, if you would indulge me, we're a little out of order here, but I did want to go over our Tuesday, January 31st proposed agenda. If you would turn back before we get into our committee reports this afternoon. Our Tuesday, January 31st. I'll give you a second just to get on page. I will note the Madam Clerk and Mr. Nava special presentation. We will move that to the January 31st. So we can go ahead and make a note of that. We do have an ordinance on final reading, ordinances on first reading. We have several resolutions on lease agreements. But more importantly, if you allow me to, and thank you, Councilwoman Hill, for making note of that at the beginning of the meeting. Item F is a repeat of an item that is on our agenda this afternoon. Item F, and I would like to request the city attorney remove that item because it is unnecessary. And one other question I had under legal, are we okay moving forward and do we need any other supporting documents for the public hearing or advertising for the public hearing on the annexation?
Well, we're, at least at this point in time, exploring what is going on in the TCA 658-106, I believe, at this point in time. And your urban growth boundary that was adopted in 2001 at this point in time had a 20-year lifespan. And I guess the question becomes, do we need to increase the current urban growth boundary at this time and the process for doing so? You were supposed to be annexing by resolution at this point in time upon petition for properties that are within your urban growth boundary, but we're going to have to look at that. We may need to give you another resolution dealing with that. One of the questions becomes under state law, how those urban growth boundaries get continued if they're looked at every 20 years and who all has to look at them. And we'll be working with planning on that between now and next week.
Okay, thank you. You'll keep us updated on that.
Yes.
Okay. Council, any other questions on the proposed Tuesday, January 31st? I see we do have a report on debt obligation. I believe Vicky will give us that on our WIFIA loan. Okay. All right, we covered that. Any further questions or comments before we move into committee? Okay, we will now move into Parks and Public Works Committee, chaired by Chairman Hester, followed by a Legislative Committee by Chairman Smith. And I will collect my paperwork and move down the hall here.
Thank you, Chair.
Sir.
Welcome to Parks and Public Works Committee. Can we accept the minutes? Second, and happy birthday, Joda. All right, Madam Clerk, can you read Parks and Outdoors Resolution F and G, please?
A resolution authorizing the waiver of park rental fees for Friends of the Festival in support of Riverfront Nights for the dates of July 22nd and 29th, August 5th, 12th, 19th, and 26th, 2023, in the amount of $6,000. A resolution to update the Department of Parks and Outdoors Parks Animation and Community Enhancement Program to increase activity in our community parks and open spaces by establishing new criteria, processes, policies, and procedures for the fee waiver program.
We do have a hand. Councilwoman Chairperson Dolly.
Oh, thank you so much. For item F, the resolution for Riverfront Nights, an additional date needed to be added, July 15th. So I do plan to make an amendment on tonight's 6 p.m. meeting to add the additional night of July 15th, and that would increase the amount to $7,000.
Okay. You good?
Mhm.
Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to acknowledge that Captain McCamish was here to answer any questions regarding that item, if anybody had any.
Questions? See no hands. Resolution H, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the wastewater department to renew blanket contract number W20010201 paving and concrete repair replacement for year 3 of 4 years with PRI of East Tennessee Inc. of Knoxville, Tennessee, and TNT Concrete LLC of Calhoun, Tennessee, for an annual amount not to exceed $1.5 million.
Thank you. No hands. Ordinance on the first reading. Public Works A, please.
An ordinance closing and abandoning a portion of the unopened right-of-way adjacent to the 1500 block of South Lyerly Street as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions.
No hands. J, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to award contract number F22002-201, roof replacement fire station number 21 to Tri-State Roofing Contractors LLC of Chattanooga, Tennessee, in the amount of $157,922 with a contingency in the amount of $15,800 for a total amount of $173,722.
Thank you. Transportation KLM, please.
A resolution authorizing payment to the Tennessee Department of Transportation for the city's share of the construction, engineering, and inspection contract cost for Reagan Smith Associates for the Lake Resort Drive project, T19004, PIN 1294441.04, with the city's portion in the amount of $686,677.48 for a total cost estimate of $838,758.62. A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to enter into a construction contract with Dement Construction Company LLC to construct a bridge along Lake Resort Drive at the location of continuing slope movement in the amount of $5,891,601.72, plus a contingency in the amount of $589,160.17 for total contract amount of $6,480,761.89. A resolution authorizing payment to the Tennessee Department of Transportation for the TDOT engineering services expenses for the Lake Resort Drive project for mandatory testing and oversight work for federally funded transportation projects in the amount of $55,000.
Thanks a lot, Madam Clerk. And let me publicly say this, Ryan, I feel you're doing a wonderful job under circumstances.
Thank you, sir. Could I ask for just 2 minutes?
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Could I ask Mr. Ricky Colston come up and just give a quick update on the new leaf and brush collection? And would also like to extend a happy birthday to Joda.
Good afternoon. How's everyone doing? We're still on track. We're going to start sweeping areas beginning the 31st, picking up leaves, bulk items, brush, backyard waste. All this will start on Monday, January the 31st. And we'll start in Area 1, which will be Tiftonia, St. Elmo, East Lake, kind of going over into East Chattanooga. So we're also going to be placing signs out this Friday. Everything's on our calendars. Social media has been notified. I just really ask that everyone be patient with us to begin with, because this is an old process that we're starting over from about 20 years ago. So,
As far as a point of clarification, can you break that down for us again? The procedure on that, what you guys are doing, as far as why the signs are there, and
well, the signs are really just to let everyone in the community know that if they've not seen it on social media or any of the news broadcasts that we are in their area, it will state that we're picking up leaves, loose leaves, and brush and bulky items. It will say that this is your week that we're picking up. We've got 15 of these signs that we're going to be placing in different areas. We've still not determined exactly where, but we'll have that by Friday. So we'll place those out in the areas we think are best. And what we'll do is these trucks will, some will pick up leaves, which are ODB machines that normally do, and then you'll have knuckle booms that pick up the other items. And we'll also take one of those trucks, because we think we're far enough ahead in the leaf program that we'll actually be picking up litter at the same time. So we'll use one of these trucks to pick up litter also.
that is great.
And that was a recommendation from Ryan, so, which I thought was a great idea.
Kudos to you, Ryan.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Burrs has a question.
I think you just answered my question. And that is, there's a tremendous amount of litter around
Yes, ma'am.
on the streets and not to be indelicate, but around where some of the homeless are standing. How are we addressing that? It's gotten pretty bad.
Yes, ma'am. We're still working off the 311 system if we have a request for litter. And
Okay,
of course, it'll determine where the litter is at, because state routes are normally taken care of by DOT. Yes, ma'am.
we've got East Brainerd Road that looks just awful, and that's a state route, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And we don't have an agreement with them.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. It's their
Brainerd
responsibility.
Road is a state route.
Yes, ma'am. It is. Yes, ma'am.
Amicola Highway.
Well, they're busy doing other things that I won't go into right now.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, okay. The problem I have is those are main routes into the city.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, they are,
Mhm.
and we look trashy.
And we did have a contract, but we did not renew it this year with the state. For
Okay.
litter pickup.
Okay, so what are the thoughts about us getting rid of the trashy look?
Well, that I think we've been waiting for, and
I didn't mean to put you in a rough spot, but I just, sorry, but Ben, what are we doing? Because I get it, those are state routes.
Yep, and if anyone from the state is listening,
they can coordinate with me on figuring out a better way to have a great MOU with the city. Yes, ma'am, we're aware and we want to make a better pickup program. We are doing some stuff with the state on the state routes, like y'all approved the prisoner litter pickup, not prisoners, but their inmates doing, in lieu of going to jail, they do some pickup. So that's occurring on state routes. There is some pickup going on. And I'll coordinate with making sure we're doing that on the roads you mentioned, East Brainerd and Brainerd Road. The city getting back involved in an MOU of maintaining, doing things on the state routes themselves is a bigger issue because, as you know, there's big interest in potholes and things like that. We want to make sure that we're getting reimbursed for the work we're doing.
Sure.
And we weren't in the old program. So we're in a lull, but I think we're going to get back to a program where we're working more closely together.
So the deal is, I think you're doing a wonderful job, Ben. You're doing a great job. Chattanooga's unique, I think, in that our main thoroughfares also happen to be state roads. So people are riding along a highway where trash may or may not be picked up, but and then you have Brainerd Road. What are some of the others? Lee Highway, Brainerd Road, East Brainerd Road?
Yes, ma'am. Pretty much all of your major routes are state routes have got to.
Right.
And Ricky, doing his defense, they want to go out there and clean up these things, but we've just got to do some negotiations to make sure the city is getting properly reimbursed. For the
This
time
isn't a
spent.
criticism. That's how can we think about and do that? And Mr. Chair, maybe some of you that can make phone calls.
I've already started to text.
Yeah, all right, good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ricky.
Yes, sir.
Last thing I'll just mention quickly is we do have a Public Works hiring fair tomorrow. So we have some critical positions that are open out there at the city yard, and we'll just put a last plug in there to try to get a good turnout tomorrow.
We have additional questions. You
I'm
good?
sorry.
Dr.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
I'm fine.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Hill.
Oh, well, thank you. I turned off my lights and
Oh.
everybody went away, but I
They can come out.
wanted to say to Ricky, the move back to the leaf and brush pickup, we all know that it makes sense. I have had my Christmas tree on the front of my house to be picked up and not turned in a 311, and I'm sure to my neighbor's chagrin, the trucks have passed my house 4 times. Even today, they backed in front of my Christmas tree. So that takes me to my next point, which is about being a good citizen.
Yes, ma'am.
Because clearly I have not turned in my own Christmas tree, and citizenship would tell me that I should help, take care of that 311. But my other point was about litter. And what I understand is that there is some work being done within a smaller committee of the city looking at litter. We brought it up on the North Shore as well. We have a lot of litter problems. But I think we as citizens are who make litter. And if we throw our litter in inappropriate places, then it trashes our city. And so there's work for all of us to do of walking down the sidewalk and picking up the aluminum can and throwing it in a recycling bin. So I think some public awareness would be good as part of our long-term efforts. That's all.
I agree. I think the old ads that we used to have, Tennessee trash, things like that, we need to implement those again.
It's so frustrating to see people at a stop sign near my home and they literally stop and they throw their cups out of, who raised you?
You good, Councilwoman Hill. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we touched a little bit on the litter and Ryan, I appreciate Ryan. I want to brag on Ryan just for a second. So this Saturday, I had a question as I was meeting with a homeowners association and about just signage that's placed in the neighborhood, in case you all haven't seen it, neighborhood inspections. And I really wasn't clear on what that meant. And I appreciate Donna responding to me as well, that they're going to incorporate also the commercial parts of inspection, not just homeowners. But Ryan, thanks for that information. It was helpful in the HOA that I was at, which was filled with tons of people. And I let them know what to expect. Can you elaborate, or Ricky, a little bit on that? And then I'll throw on the litter pile on the end.
Well, that's not Ricky. That's more in Tony's shop.
Is Tony here?
I don't see Tony, but it's really just an effort from a code enforcement perspective for us to be a little bit more proactive, for us to be communicating, similar to the signs for zone, the zone pickup that Ricky's doing with leaves, brush, bulk trash. These are signs indicating to the community, hey, we're doing a proactive sweep of the neighborhood in terms of code enforcement. Okay, so overgrowth, abandoned vehicles, dilapidated buildings, things of that nature. Informing the community, we're going to be out in the community doing these things and rotating through the city doing that activity over the coming weeks and months. So just a little bit more of a proactive community engagement versus a not really sure, where we are engaging. So.
Okay. But like I said, I do appreciate very much Donna responding back to me with, we'll definitely include the commercial, because we have a lot of commercial violators as well.
Mm-hmm.
And believe me, I get my share of emails on them. So incorporating them with an wraparound is, I think, pretty good. Let's go with litter. I'll pile on there, Dr. Burrs. So this is a subject that I've had privately conversation. I was talking with the mayor actually on text this morning about this. And the folks in Chattanooga and Hamilton County really don't care who picks it up, I think. I think it is, pointing who the state or it's the city or it's the county. I think we're all just sick of it. It's compiled. With what I do, y'all hear me say this, I'm a broken record, but with what I do for a living is sometimes I'm in 7 of the 9 districts on a daily basis. And I swear every piece of trash jumps out and says and waves hello to me. It's compiled. It's gotten really bad, and that makes it worse. In the wintertime, it's really worse. I get off at exit 3A every day to go home. Coming home, I come in every morning on 75 into 24. I'm looking at remnants of home sites and whatnot, and somebody has got to be responsible for it. So if you're saying to me that we do not have that relationship with TDOT anymore, and then yes, I'll be happy to start making phone calls with my state reps, because I got them right here and they're very responsive. And I think that we need to get that fixed, number one. So let me know what I can do offline to help spur that conversation. Because I'm tired of it. I mean, it's ridiculous, and it's just gotten too much.
I think to your point, Chairman, and also to Councilwoman Hill's point, I think we all just have to do our part, right?
Yep.
And so the state, the city, the county, the individual community members, we all just have to lean in to our lanes and
we had a cleanup not long ago, Ryan. You remember that?
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
I went out on East Brainerd Road and picked up real estate magazines. That's not a slight at anybody, but I figured out who it was.
Mm-hmm.
Figured out who was the recycling issue, and I figured out where they're flying out. I mean, these things are all over East Brainerd Road about once a month, and I just had enough. And I picked them up. I made some phone calls. I haven't seen it since. It's been about a year, or maybe about 6 or 8 months since we did that back in the summer. So I haven't seen that, but you're right. You're right, and we can do it.
And I do think, to your point, in wintertime, this is a more visible problem because vegetation is
Covers
less,
it.
right?
Yeah.
We've talked about this before. So it's a great opportunity to rally the troops a bit, looking ahead to Earth Day between now and then in April. And back to Ricky's point, our leaf vacuum trucks work very well with litter as well. And so we will be taking that on as, again, we have, I think, 3 or 4 of the trucks. So one of the trucks will be spending some time doing litter as well during these routes. And it's not a silver bullet, right? But I do think it will make an impact. So, but we as administration will continue to think hard about how we can do our part, but we do need everybody chipping in to move this issue forward.
All right, let's keep that conversation going. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for thinking of.
And,
keeping
and
that
these
forefront.
trucks, when leaf season is over, they will stay in the rotation, and that's what they'll be doing is picking up litter.
Yeah, and I'll thank Mayor Kelly too for his response with me and constant contact. And yeah, I know he feels the urgency of this as well.
Absolutely.
All right,
Yep.
thanks. Thank you, Chairman.
You good, Chair? Co-Chair, Councilwoman Rakita Dottie.
I wanted to just confirm that even though y'all are doing area sweeps or area cleanups, people can still call 311 to, if they have issues in their community, if it's not a neighborhood you're already sweeping in for that week.
They will be able to, it's the SRs for brush, backyard waste, leaves will be turned off this Friday. Everything else will still be there. So potholes or any other issues, they'll still be able to call. And they can still call 311 if they don't have a computer to see when we're going to be in their area.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And 311 will say, hey, this is when the next date is for your pickup.
Oh, okay.
You know
That
what I mean?
works.
So, yeah.
Okay. Thank y'all.
Thank you, guys.
And there is sorry, Chair, there is an interactive map that is a part of the press release. So if people aren't sure exactly the date for their pickup, they can enter it into that website, and it can tell them exactly when their pickup dates are. So hopefully that's helpful for folks. And again, I'll just ask the council for any help you can offer in terms of plugging our hiring fair tomorrow. Would love you to share that with your networks because we've got some jobs to fill. So
You send us a one-pager.
sure, happy to do that.
Get that on.
Thank you, guys. Ricky alluded to the advertising using that was on TV at one point. There's no trash like Tennessee trash.
Yes, sir.
Right. But Chattanooga is a beautiful city. Just certain periods of the year, I guess the beginning of the year, I know Chairman, he's echoed his concerns about litter, and I got so upset myself that I went to our attorneys. I pulled the ordinance as far as litter. So we definitely are aware of the problem. Want to definitely come to some solution to it. But thank you guys for being proactive. Appreciate you guys.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you.
Beautiful. That concludes Parks and Public Works. Legislative Committee is coming up. Chair Ken Smith. Thank you, sir.
Hello.
All right, we'll call to order our legislative committee meeting. Have a motion on the minutes?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. No objection. Minutes will stand as recorded. The item that we have this week is a continuation of a previous meeting to discuss our STVR ordinance. I believe all of you have received a red line version, red, green, and blue line version, which was very well done, as well as Councilwoman Hill's casserole recipe. It's just absolutely fantastic. Made it so much easier to get through. So with that, Councilwoman, did you kind of want to take it from there?
Thank you very
Please.
much, Chair. What I did was as promised, I took the bulk of what Councilman Henderson had proposed within the ordinance that he had brought forward, along with the bulk of the thought that the administration led by Chris Anderson had brought to us after our series of public comment and many ad hoc committee meetings, and brought the main points together, tried to fill gaps in the logic, and then also added some additional thoughts of my own, which are in red. The highlights of this document, I think a strong part of it is we've got detailed definitions for everything, including new definitions for what we mean by single family and multifamily housing, which is pertinent to the density cap that we've been discussing. Also, you'll note that we have the application and certificate fees that we've been discussing, the accountability and enforcement mechanisms, and then I wanted to point out to everyone, because we have been passing quite a lot of documents across this committee, is that the letters to neighbors portion of our previous practice has been removed from this document as it had been from Councilman Henderson's. This document that I have brought to you does leave the moratorium in place for the full 6 months, which would be July 9th. But it does allow for all of the enforcement mechanisms to begin, and would help people know what the opportunities are for new short-term vacation rentals. And then finally, there's a clause at the very end that commits us to consider lifting the overlay in 12 months from passage. So it doesn't mean that we are committing to lift it, but it means that we are saying that 12 months from the passage of this, that we will talk about it again, and that we will be able to have a year's worth of experience behind us to know what has worked. And I think it could also be an appropriate time to do any tweaks to the ordinance. And I'd be happy to add that in. As I did this work, there were a handful of things which you'll see on page 2 in the need to discuss bullet points that are things that are still questions that remain for me that we have not fully discussed or explored as a body. And I think they're critical for us to come to some sort of consensus on before I can bring this fully into form as a final draft for you all to consider as an alternate version. And I brought this up last week. I would like us to discuss today, if possible, if we have time, the individual roles of the appeals board and the administrative hearing officer, because we have two enforcement mechanisms within this. And I think that our attorney would be able to shed some light on what legally each board would be able to do. And then we could decide, what things are most important to us. Doesn't sound like we are fully talked through the transfer question. And it was brought up by Councilman Henderson last week, the concept that the short-term vacation rental appeals board would actually, in his mind, would consider whether or not a transfer would be allowed, which I thought was interesting, because his point was that it could actually help thin the herd, so to speak, over time if we allowed the appeals board to focus on making that density cap retroactive. So if you're going in for a permit renewal, you're not necessarily guaranteed one if there's too much density in that area. Something to think about. Townhouses and zero lot line. That was something that, as we're thinking through how we're figuring out that 500-foot buffer, do we as a body want to consider connected townhouses as a multifamily or as a single family? Because zero lot line originally, you'll note within the language, zero lot line is included as single family detached. But if you have a block of 20 townhomes, what do we think that is? So I want y'all's opinion. And then also, there has been a clause within the document brought by Councilman Henderson about and it was in the administration's version as well, about a rezoning waiting period, an 18-month waiting period that if you were to rezone a property, given the fact that this new ordinance would actually focus on the actual structure of the building, whether it is physically attached or detached, I don't know if we still need that or not. So I will be quiet and take a whole bunch of notes as everybody else talks, if that's all right, Chairman.
That is wonderful, but I don't see any of the lights. Oh, hang on. There we go.
I mean, if you like it how it is, I'll just have Phil finish it up for us.
Vice Chair Dotley.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair. I did have a few questions just for some clarity. One was starting with page 3 of 13. Item E under section 11.512. It says there shall be no more than 9 bedrooms made available for rental. But under definitions, it says there'll be no more than 5 bedrooms. So is that a just kind of oversight error, or it seems to be a conflict in, will it be 5 or 9 or? Sure, 3 of 13.
Oh.
3, I'm sorry,
Okay, there we go. Got it.
at the bottom. Yes, item E.
Yeah, the 9-bedroom thing, it is confusing. And I think that some of that is state legal language.
Okay,
And I will follow up on that. and get
Okay.
an answer.
just to match the
The
definitions.
language in the state law defines a, I guess, an item that is a B and B or a tourist hotel for up to 9, I believe, up to 9 bedrooms. Normal, short-term vacation rentals, I believe, is limited to 5 bedrooms.
Okay, so that just needs to be
So we
adjusted
may
to
be able
5.
just to strike that sentence, there should be no more than 9, Phil. I'll
Okay.
make a note and we'll see if
All right.
that's legal counsel.
Okay, thank you. Also, so now I'm on page 4 of 13. On the absentee short-term vacation rentals, item N. I had some questions from constituents regarding R2 neighborhoods. I know we moved from zones to functions. So, and I see a lot of single-family detached dwellings, but a lot of communities are R2 or UGC or C2. So how are these addressed? How is that addressed within this?
So the way that we have addressed this is within the definitions, which you all can see on page 2. We are looking at single-family detached dwellings and multifamily dwellings. So a single-family detached, it's less about the zone and more about the actual structure of the building.
Mhm.
So single-family detached dwellings can include not just R1, but single-family zero lot line dwellings, which was what I brought up earlier. Single-family detached dwellings developed under a horizontal property regime. And then multifamily dwellings, for purposes of clarity based on our conversations thus far, I have actually grouped duplexes into multifamily dwellings.
Okay.
So they are an attached structure with more than one family unit, living unit in each. And thus, under the density cap, 1 unit of a duplex or 2-unit building would be allowed to be a absentee short-term vacation rental,
Okay,
would be eligible for a permit.
okay.
And I mean, that's something that up for discussion.
Okay, and then what about like UGC or those that are in C2? So it's just about it actually being the house that people live in.
Correct.
It's not necessarily about the actual zone itself.
And it also allows for living areas within a commercial zone. So the multifamily dwelling definition also notes that multifamily dwellings can occur as a standalone use or incorporated into a mixed use or mixed use development with other residential or non-residential uses. So for example, in District 7, I know along Main Street, for example, there's a lot of commercial on the bottom, true mixed use. And so within those dwellings, that singular structure, they would be allowed 5% with a minimum of 1 unit.
Okay. Thank you. And I just have, I think, 4 more questions and I'll be finished. In regards to, I guess, the transferability, just being able to transfer those properties, and I guess that's a broader discussion amongst all of us to see if that's something we would want to do, because that can create an additional problem, people buying, selling properties and just transferring them here and there. That could really turn into an issue. So I guess further discussion on that and how that will look going before an appeals board, just to have a measure of regulation there instead of just somebody coming and filling it out, but actually looking at, you know, why are you transferring it? Is it a LLC transferring to another LLC to do, you know, what's for the betterment of the neighborhood in that case? And how does that work? And also under, I'm sorry, let me look at the page 7 is where I am. So I looked at C, and then for item D, it talks about holding a public hearing once there has been 3 documented violations of city code. When it says public hearing, does it mean something that they will come before us like zoning cases do, or is that public hearing? Is it considered a public hearing when it goes to the administrative hearing officer? So for instance, there have been violations, maybe neighbors have complained or whatever the case is. Where's that public hearing taking place? Or under what institution or body is it taking place?
That is a great question. As it is written right now, I think we need to have Chris join us to talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
And I think that speaks directly to the question of what falls to the appeals board and what falls to the AHO. So yeah, Chris, might you give us some insight on that one? Your thoughts?
Thank you, Councilwoman. And we're open on that specific issue. I think ideally that hearing would either go to the administrative hearing officer or to the board, not to the council or any other political body. It would go, as the council has expressed wishes, to either the board or the AHO, and the administration would be fine with either.
Okay. That works. Thank you, Chris.
I'll put that on a list of what might be due.
Okay.
And then we can come back to it as other people bring up thoughts about which body would do what.
Okay. And then on that page, on the short-term vacation rental annual fee, item C, it says, you know, a certificate more than 30 days beyond its expiration date shall not be renewed. Since it's not renewed, they would then come in and apply for a new STVR in that case.
Correct. They would have to reapply.
Okay.
Which effectively could change their ability to get a permit based on density.
Right, okay. And for instance, if like someone right now has a homestay 500, you know, homestay short-term vacation rental, and when all this is lifted and they come back in for their renewal, but we've issued another one maybe absentee across the street. I mean, how does the density
So
cap work?
homestays are not included within the density cap. The density cap is related specifically to absentee.
Okay.
And so there is opportunity across the city of Chattanooga within the overlay for people to add homestay STVRs. What we found within our committee was that was not where the concerns of neighborhoods were. That in fact contributes to our ability to afford our homes.
Okay. And then my last question, Councilwoman Hill, is on page 11 of the 13, item D. It talks about providing a written report to the appeals board. And I just asked that we also get a written report. Each city council member gets their report the same way we get it for a board of zoning appeals and all those different things. So we'll know within our district just what is going on with some of these short-term vacation rentals. So I think those are all of my questions.
Good, Vice Chair.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to thank Councilwoman Hill for bringing sort of this mixture together, which she has done. I'm not good at English either. She's done a much better job of sort of combining the two than what I did. On the definitions, I guess one of the things that I came away with last week and thought about is maybe trying to get away from even the single family, what we call single family or multifamily, by not knowing, what our new zoning codes are going to do. I started playing around with the idea of a multi-unit structure or a single unit structure, and we could define that by 2 or more primary dwellings attached per parcel. And the same thing with the single family would be one primary dwelling detached per parcel, which we might want to think about defining, everything in that regard. And then it wouldn't matter, I don't think, as to whether they were UGC, zero lot lines. It would just be, is there one structure on this parcel, or are there multi-structures or multi dwellings, primary dwellings on this structure attached? So we might could, as I thought about it, and let me just tell the council this, I think this has been a great process, and we're doing exactly what this body's designed to do, and that's to legislate. And we should never let an administration, not particularly this administration, any administration's inability to enforce inhibit our ability to legislate. So I think we're doing exactly what we need to be doing, and that's our job, and that's creating legislation that will affect the entire city, whether this legislation is within the district or it's, and I'm going to call it citywide, because when we open it up, everybody will have the opportunity at some point, maybe, if this council so decides. And back in 2019, I think 4 council people decided they didn't want it in their district. And so we as a council created the legislation that kept it out.
Can I answer about the definition?
Sure.
So about the definitions, so you and I were both playing with that multi-unit structure. And so as I was trying to flesh out the single family, and then actually I think I got to a stumbling block maybe with multi. I reached out to Karen within the planning, and Karen also worked with Dallas, and this definition is what they feel like will best solve or meet the need.
Okay.
So I was kind of surprised too to see family come back in. But Karen was integral in that. And so we'll get her to triple check that this is where we're headed. And then also the parcel and lot, you read my mind, sir. So in the Google Doc that I've been working on, I asked the question about the buffer zone, how we're going to measure that, what's possible. Would we do it by the parcel or by the lot? And the answer is neither, because, and I was also thinking about the specific zoning of the parcel or the lot, but parcels apparently are somewhat, is Karen here? Karen, will you come tell us about parcels and lots, please? And then the thought about using the GIS with the Centrium, I think is the fancy word we're going to, Centroid.
Centroid. Jenny had tagged me about the term parcel, and I said, well, we use lot for like distance requirements for liquor stores, 500 feet from a lot. And then I started thinking about it some more and talked to our research and analysis staff, which are really heavy GIS users. And we started talking about what would make sense. And lot is not a layer we have in GIS. We have parcels. And parcels are a taxing, they're used for taxing, and they're a little bit more fluid. And also you might have a really irregular parcel so your buffer could be really kind of wonky. So we talked about the center of a building. So a 500-foot buffer from the center of a building, the centroid of a building, and that would be generated by GIS. And I reached out to Chris Acuff, and he said he used the centroid idea too. When he used GIS mapping, he used parcels because that's what he had. But I think our recommendation, and we have not talked to DRP about this, or I did not, is to use the center of a building. So it's a pretty defined point. It would be a center, so you'd have round buffer, a 500-foot round buffer instead of kind of a weird oblong shape, maybe around a parcel. And the building is a GIS file that someone could generate that buffer from.
Oh, okay, well.
And Karen, while we have you, would you speak to the why of the definitions of single family, detached, and multifamily?
So there is a unit definition in the zoning ordinance, so we can go back and look at that. When you're just talking about describing uses, we use those in common terms as part of the, and they're in the zoning ordinance. So rather than writing a new definition, I think we talked about the nuance of when we have a single family residence and an HPR. So it's just trying to use definitions we already have. But there is a unit definition in the zoning ordinance, so that could be a possibility too.
All right, I'll look into that.
Okay. Thank you, Karen. So I do have one question. You have in the green, that's from the administration. And I guess I'm a little confused because the short-term vacation rental district, I don't think was in the document that Chris Anderson presented. So is part of the green, the original ordinance? Well, I say the current ordinance.
I requested the text, the Google document from Chris to pull this together, and that was what was in it. So it's possible it was an older version, maybe, I'm not sure.
Because I didn't think, Chris, the version that you presented would not have had a short-term vacation rental district in it, would it?
It wouldn't. And just a tiny correction. I believe that staff in the city attorney's office provided you with a copy that wasn't the most current based on our conversation yesterday. So we may want to double check that and make sure that it's accurate, but that shouldn't take long at all.
Well, and I don't know that's a big point. All I'm trying to do is parse out what's maybe in the current version, because like in my ordinance, I left some of the current version in it, tweaked some other parts. And when I saw that, I thought, well, I know that wasn't in the proposed legislation that Chris had presented. So then it kind of confused me as to what was really administration, what was current.
Would you suggest that we discuss removing the vacation rental district altogether?
No. I would propose leaving that in there for the time being to give the council people that right now don't want it some comfort and some track record of enforcement. Like I said, our soft opening before we take it to the whole general public, let's see some track record of enforcement. The other thing that I would like to see in here is the transferability, and I think I had that in mind. I think that's important, and I think that creating some language that allows the appeals board to decide if it's appropriate or not. And that's the reason I said I think a living, breathing human being needs to make the decision, because well, let me put it this way. There will be very appropriate places for these R1 absentee short-term vacation rentals to exist. And I think there's going to be situations where it's very appropriate. So to say, to make it non-transferable, I think is a mistake. And I would really, I want to see that in the legislation. The other thing, and I think it was really kind of an oversight on my part on the letters to neighbors, and you pointed that out, and I had gone to the city attorney, and I had sort of incorporated some of the discussion that we had last week into a version 10, and we just weren't able to quite get it in a form that could be presented. But I think it may be important to keep the letters to the neighbors in the, I'm just going to call it R1 for my brain's sake, in these R1 absentee short-term vacation rentals, just so that, and we talked about this a little bit whenever we created the original ordinance. We wanted to give this sort of the dignity of a rezoning case. So that if there were some objections from the neighbors, that they could at least be heard. And I think that may be an important layer to add into at least this version at this time, and then we'll see where it goes in a year. But other than that, I think maybe that was all the questions that I had. And like I said, I appreciate your diligence on putting these two together. I think it does give it some clarity, define some things much better than what I had in mind. And I appreciate the council working. And Mr. Chair, I noticed, we don't have we don't have a strategic planning meeting next week. It's a 5th Tuesday, which is not normally a strategic planning, but I wonder if, the council would like to, if we'd like to huddle back up in a strategic planning meeting to try to, iron out. It sounds like we're getting close to being able to put something on the agenda. And we obviously, want it refined the best that we can. So, I'll leave that up to chairman and the council if they want to continue working through this.
Regarding the transferability, Chip, if you will, look at the top of page 7 at C, and just offline, you can tell me what you think of it, but that's the language thus far that we've got. Or actually, I don't know legally, you can tell me offline what you think of it. You can send it to Phil.
Oh, well, for some reason I didn't see that. Yeah, okay. I guess I just read that.
We could have cut
page.
out the last 10 minutes if you'd said that sooner.
Do what?
Interrupt him.
What's
Thank
you,
you,
I didn't
Councilman.
hear you.
We're gonna move on. Councilwoman Burrs.
Okay. This has been an interesting conversation. This is more process. So Councilman Henderson and Councilwoman Hill, are you all now, there's only one version that you all are there still a version and an alternate version? I just yes or no. It's
Maybe we can get on board with the same version.
With the same-
It's coming together.
okay, all right. And that's why you're wanting a strategic planning meeting to help make that happen
Yeah.
next week.
I'd much rather present one than.
Then, all right. Okay. And the things that Councilwoman Hill put out there that need more discussion, I think that's absolutely correct. And I think that's why I would second having the strategic planning limited to the things that you all have brought up so well. So are we talking about keeping the moratorium in effect for 6 months, and during that 6 months, being able to prove a track record?
Correct. The way that this is written, the moratorium that we extended that goes through the July 9th, that would stay in effect. But by going ahead and passing this, we are funding new enforcement mechanisms. We are creating new enforcement mechanisms. So for example, if there is a problem with a short-term vacation rental and they get X number of complaints, and we decided that would trigger an appeals board hearing, we would have the appeals board. So on
Okay,
and so on.
and the details, I'm really just talking process. So I heard two things. Let's say we pass all this, and then the suggestion is that we keep an overlay and then we revisit citywide in a year. Is that what we're saying?
Correct, unless this body is open to removing the overlay
Okay.
now.
Okay.
Or
And
even maybe doing a homestay citywide
All
and then
right.
going.
Okay, so I heard two things that I need clarity on. I think enforcement is very important. Since we've had all this discussion. People in my district have, I've had a lot of conversations, people from the district. And I didn't hear so much relative to homestay sorts of things. It's the other kind, the absent landlord sorts of things. So my answer to them is we're still working out the details. It's not ready to go on the agenda yet. We are looking at the issues that Councilwoman Hill suggested that we look at, only pertaining to the overlay. Is that correct?
Currently, yes.
That's, yeah, all right. Chris,
Yes, ma'am.
I really need the chart from how many are illegal in my district.
How about
We were
this?
gonna get that.
Right
and
here.
Where is it?
I've been waiting till the end of the meeting for Chairman Smith to call me up and talk about that.
All right,
So whenever
okay.
you're ready, I can talk.
All right, so just another comment. And I would like more thinking on, and Councilman Henderson, I think this is you. I can't think of a reason, that may be because I'm limited, that a transfer would be by right.
It would not be by right.
Okay, then you're saying anytime I want to transfer something to somebody else, it needs the,
Go to the appeals board.
because the automatic answer is no, and therefore I'm appealing it. Is that what you're saying? Well, if you go to appeals board, you gotta be appealing something. Yes.
The transfer would be based on the decision of the appeals board.
So the language in it would be transfers are not by right. That's where I'm going. The point is that, and I'm at 30,000 feet right now. You can't go to an appeals board if you're not appealing something that already exists in law. So the law is that transfers are not by right, and therefore I'm appealing it.
So maybe we need to call this something besides an appeals board.
Well, I'm just tossing this stuff out because
We're not appealing the transfer. We're going and asking, can I transfer?
and we can talk offline, but there has to be a no before you can appeal something. I like the appeals board idea, but maybe we can flesh the wording out a little, because you have to be appealing something. And the appeal is always things didn't go your way, therefore you're filing an appeal. So just think about that when you all are doing your language. I'm not sure what the appeals board, and I know I'm getting way out there, but from everything you've said, I'm not sure what unless the appeals board is appealing an administrative hearing officer decision. Well, then you don't need an appeals board, because what are they appealing?
Maybe we need to call it a different, short-term vacation rental committee. Let's just call it that.
That does what? That's all I'm saying.
That here's transfer request, that here's neighborhood,
Opposition.
opposition.
And so they,
Or complaint, or violations. So let's
just
call.
think carefully about
let's call
what
it
you're
short-term
doing.
vacation rental committee.
Okay, so
And then they will hear transfer requests, not appeals, but transfer requests.
all I'm saying is a million things come to mind, and this conversation has gotten long, but just think about what you may want that to be. I guess my question,
You're on point. I'm just, I mean, that's fine. And maybe we need to reword it. That's the reason we're having this discussion, is to make sure that we have it like it needs to be when we put it forward.
all right, so as far as the district I represent, then my message to them is we're still discussing and having really good discussion. These are great, Jenny, the points you brought up. We're still discussing it. The council is still discussing it. However, nothing's going to happen at this point that's going to affect you, perhaps for a year, perhaps for 6 months. They'll say, give me the year. What they're looking for is a track record of enforcement. Okay.
I wanted to bring something forward now, not in June, so that we could begin proving it.
Okay, thank you both so hard for your work. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You got it. Thank you. Chairman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman Smith. A couple of quick things. Let me address the call for, I'm going to call it a work session, not a strategic planning session, if I can, on this item. I would love to see this ball rolling and keep it rolling, and I appreciate both of you for the hard work you've done. I actually understand where the differences are through this process. And this conversation, I think we've got more conversation to launch from here forward. So I would like to honor the request for a work session on this next week. What time, if council agrees, would you like to meet? And I will note in context, we did not have a strategic planning session on when we, because we were not here on the 3rd. So we are in a month of 5, we are missing an opportunity, I think, on the record to discuss. So does that work for everyone? 2 o'clock, a work session on short-term vacation rentals, proposed legislation. We'll keep this conversation going. Okay, very good. Mr. Attorney, Madam Clerk. So we've got that settled. Mr. Anderson, I'm going to hand it back to Chairman Smith, but I believe you're going to talk about the Granicus effect. Okay.
All right, thank you, sir. Prior to Mr. Anderson coming up and wrapping this up for us with some information he's got, there's still one item I asked about last week I haven't heard anybody address yet. So unless you want me to introduce something that completely screws this up from the floor, I would like to see some kind of option for well, I mean, I've got it. Well, one of the items that Councilwoman Burrs brought up that Councilman Henderson jumped on, I'd already made a note about, which is maybe appeals is the wrong term. So you've got an item in here or a line in here about no lot proposed for an absentee short-term vacation rental site may be located within 500 feet from the nearest property line of a permitted single-family detached dwelling absentee short-term vacation rental unless approved by the whatever we want to call it. And the reason I say that is, again, I know of a gentleman who's purchased 90 some acres in a very rural area, and he wants to build cabins for this particular purpose. There's no way to get away from the property line boundary, but there are no other neighbors anywhere near him that are going to complain about what it is that he's doing. And I think we need to leave that option open for those rare circumstances where this just shuts it down. So if there is at least an opportunity to present to a committee to state, there's no opposition to this, I own 80 acres around it, I think that opportunity needs to be available.
I think that, so I'll work on bringing something. One of the cautions that I'm going to have as I explore this is how do we ensure that we don't have neighborhoods that are built to be short-term vacation rentals? And perhaps our horizontal property regime language helps that. But yeah, I'll give it a bunch of thought and I'll bring you something next week.
Thank you very much. Mr. Anderson? May not all be developable next to each other like that. Don't want him to have to cut slopes now, Jenny. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to congratulate Chef Hill on the casserole she has baked for all of us. It has just the right amount of every ingredient from the
Just missing
others.
some salt.
We, in all seriousness, thank you, Councilwoman Hill. We're very happy that you've managed to find compromise on a difficult issue. And the reason I know it's a difficult issue is that every city in America struggles with it. It's not unique to Chattanooga or Hamilton County. It is a situation that no city has perfected in our country. So we are dealing with it as everyone else is. But I'm here to end the meeting on a good note, some good news. So yesterday I got the list of the unpermitted ones from our staff, and I thought, this list is not right. I sent it back to him 3 times and then realized, no, it's right. So when we started the enforcement mechanism and the letters and all the outreach about the moratorium, and you guys did the moratorium, and there was tough talk from the council, we had over 400 unlicensed STVRs operating in our city. Today we have 215. So that's nearly half, nearly 200 units of housing conceivably are back on the market because we indicated that we were going to have rules that worked in place very soon. And I want to thank this council for that on behalf of the mayor. This is a positive step forward. That said, I do have the list of all 215 by council district that I'll hand out to you now.
They're all in District 8.
I will lovingly say that most of you think you either have way more or way less than you actually do in your districts. And a surprising thing, and it was the same for me too, the shocking thing for me is that the vast majority of unlicensed units are within the overlay. The vast majority. The least are in districts 3, 4, and 6. And the most are in districts 7, 8, and 2. I think it was 7, 2, 8 though in order. And then there are actually only 8 in District 6 and 8 in, I believe, District 4. And Chairman, I think you're the winner with only 6 in District 3, if I remember correctly.
Do my best. Thank you, sir.
You got a lot of law abiders up there who heard we were enforcing this and maybe took their listings down. And the listings, we do comb the listings multiple times a week. So that list that I just gave you represents anything that's been listed within the last month or month and a half. So the fact that it's down so much, that's really good news. It means that, our enforcement talk is working, and now we're going to follow it up with more enforcement action and have a system that really works well.
Okay. Is that it, Mr. Anderson?
Thank you very much.
All right, seeing no lights, we will adjourn legislative committee and go into attorney-client privilege. We meet in the conference room? Will do. We're adjourned.